Connecting to cloud. Okay, cool. So let's begin. Hi, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to the Jyotish Network YouTube channel. We are a group of budding, enthusiastic students and practitioners of the ancient astrology science of India called Jyotish. As a part of our studies, we've learned under some of the greatest living teachers that are there on this planet, including the likes of Sri Mark Boni, Sri James Keller, and Miss Penny Farrow. What we want to achieve over the series of next few episodes is share our perspectives on how to go about interpreting the astrological charts under the principles laid down in the classical texts of Jyotish. And for today's episode, which is the inaugural episode, we are going to cover a very fundamental concept in Jyotisha, which is on Raj Yogas or success giving combinations in your chart. The format of the episode will be majorly conversations on the concepts as well as going through a few sample charts to see how these get activated at the right periods in time. So I have my colleagues KP and Sandeep also joining on this episode, who are a part of the Jyotish Network team. And without any ado, I'll hand it over to Sandeep to just give a broad context and background on what Raj Yogas are, and then we can proceed from here. Please do also like and subscribe to the channel, and especially if you find something of value. And please do reach out to us if you need any specific queries, consultations, or assistance that you need. Thank you. Sandeep, please over
Yeah,
to you.
thanks, Kulak. This is wonderful to be here with all of you. So, just diving into the topic, and this is one topic which kind of puts a lot of people who are learning Jyotisha or have been consulting astrologers for some time to kind of come up with a confusion in their mind, saying the astrologer told me there is a Raj Yoga, but I haven't experienced anything of that kind. And is there a Raj Yoga at all? How is it formed? And so we thought today was a good time to kind of simplify the whole thing, make it easy to understand and grasp, and at the same time give you some ideas about what are some of the subtle points which sometimes are missed. And hence we see a very wide range of results appearing in various people's lives. So let me quickly introduce the topic, and then I'll invite Costa and sorry KP and Pulak to contribute. A Raj Yoga is essentially a combination of planets by house ownership, right? So there are some yogas which are formed which are not related to ownership of houses in a chart. A Raj Yoga is essentially one which is created by the fact that they own certain houses in a chart. And what does it translate to is a period of prosperity and rise in status. So that's really what a Raj Yoga is. KP, would you like to add something from your side?
Yeah, sure, Sandeep. Just like you said, when we try to assess these Raja Yogas, we first of all look at how the planets are placed, and we try to find some common linkages or sambandhas, either by placement, aspect, or conjunction. And we look for a relationship between the four kendras and the three trikonas. And whenever you see such a combination by either placement, aspect, or conjunction, that particular combination of planets is uh, supposed to be the classic definition of a Raja Yoga.
True. Pulak, any thoughts on that?
Uh, the only thing is, in addition to seeing these combinations of Raj Yoga, I think it becomes really important to qualify the strength or the quality of the Raj Yogas, because I'm sure there are a lot of videos out there on YouTube, as well as you would have heard many astrologers saying, this combination leads to Raj Yoga, and so you'll get success. But usually that doesn't pan out in real life. And that's because what we also do additionally in looking at these combinations is to see what is the underlying strength of the planets, to see if the Raj Yogas are going to give the result strongly or not.
So that means we are introducing something called intensity of results, or maybe how strongly results play out in different charts. KP, any thoughts on that? on? Is there something?
Yeah, like one way to assess Sandeep would be just try to look at from different lagnas. Primarily, we always try to look at the Raj Yogas from the actual lagna as well as the Chandra lagna. And if there are repeating patterns, that kind of increases the intensity.
Look, anything on repeating patterns? I mean, why are we wanting to look for repeating patterns, and how does that help?
Yeah, and I also want to add that some of our audience may not be familiar with the word Lagna. It's nothing but the ascendant of your chart or the rising sign of your chart. Now, just to answer Sandeep your question, why what it in a way we are analyzing the charts from multiple points of view, and we are looking for confluence. So if there is a certain indication of success or elevation in recognition that is repeating from either your ascendant, which is the lagna, or the two luminaries, which is the moon or the sun, and in sort of Jyotish language we call it as the Chandra lagna or the Surya lagna, then the likelihood or the probability of the Raj Yogas getting activated increases significantly. Not that Raj Yogas don't give results only from a single ascendant, but just in terms of looking at confluence and increasing the probability of a likelihood of a event, we consider multiple lagnas.
Yeah, this is interesting because even if we look at human behavior, and day-to-day life, if we look at our life, if we look at the children, or if we look at some people we interact with almost on a everyday basis, over a period of time, we kind of have a predictable pattern, that we know someone will do a similar thing in a similar situation, and it's pretty predictable. So that's, I think, the predictability part of the fact that it's it's something which is more definite to happen. So you can be pretty sure that when it repeats from various lagnas, it is going to operate with some degree of strength. But that also brings me to, then, is there a difference between the fact that there is a firm likelihood of this Raj Yoga getting repeated from Lagnas, which has got established, versus the kind of results? So, how does one kind of look at, is that, how do I say that, what, how strong results would come out of there, come out of a particular Raj Yoga? Has it got something to do with the strength of the planets, or is just repeating from Lagnas good enough? Anything, KP, Pulak, anyone like to say something?
Yeah, Sandeep, you mentioned the strength of planets. And like when we start looking at those repeating patterns that you as well as Bullock mentioned, like the next step that we naturally do is we look at the planets which are involved in those Raj Yoga patterns, and
Okay.
then we start looking at how strong those planets are. So when we talk about planetary strength, like one of the primary things that we try to look is like the sign placement of the planet in the D1 as well as how it is placed in the D9 or the Navamsha chart, and whether it's gaining some residual strength or whether it's losing that strength, which is quite apparent in the D1 sometimes, but when you look at the D9, you see that it doesn't have much juice in it. That
Mhm.
kind of, I think, is quite important in trying to assess like how strong the results of that yoga would be.
Okay. Okay.
And if I can add, Sandeep, it's almost like determining the quality of gold. So there is 24 karat gold,
Mm.
then there are levels under that, right? So a 24 karat gold or a 24 karat Raj Yoga, if I can put it like that, is a very rare thing in a chart, and there have to be supporting factors like KP and you mentioned the component planets in a Raj Yoga need to have sources of strength. Sources of strength could include they are either exalted, they are in their own sign, they are involved in an exchange, they have either a source of strength in the Navamsha. But in addition to that, what we also look at is a whether they repeat from different lagnas, and also whether there's a benefic influence or a malefic influence on the Raj Yoga. So, as an example, if Jupiter, so for example, if Venus and Moon are forming a Raj Yoga and there's a benefic influence of Jupiter on it, we
Hmm.
would know that maybe the quality gets boosted up a bit. because Jupiter is a natural benefic.
Oh, so I mean, now we are looking at some interesting points, and I think viewers, you would have also noticed that just the fact that two planets come together is one starting point here. So you're off the
Mhm.
block kind of a story. And then we spoke about the fact that we see whether it's getting repeated. The same pattern is getting supported from the Chandra Lagna or the Surya Lagna. And then we also spoke about that there is some intrinsic strength that the planets carry or not. So are the planets weak? Are they combust? Are they losing in a planetary war? So if they're losing strength, obviously the quality of that yoga is going off, and it's not a 24 gold carat like Pulak said. So there is a sense of pristineness to the yoga itself, whether it's aspected by additionally by a malefic or a benefic. And the more benefic influences on that yoga, we are actually raising the bar for the yoga and saying it's getting purer, it's pristine, it is strong, it repeats from lagnas, and so it's a powerful Raj Yoga. KP, that actually brings me to a point, where a lot of people have asked me, and I'm sure you've experienced the same, that uh, I have this very powerful Raj Yoga in my chart. When will I experience it? And a lot of people have Raj Yogas but never have the experience of that. Any thoughts on
Yeah,
that?
yeah, it's very true, Sandeep. Usually, when like friends and family they come to you and they know you as a student, the first thing they ask is how many Raj Yogas do I have, and the second thing they ask is when are they going to be activated? Like when will I see the results?
Yeah.
And like what we have been taught and what we have seen in our research from so many examples is that like the yogas show what and the dashas show when, and that's like one of the primary principles which we have been taught by our teachers, and it really works. And like when someone asks me that question, that when will this yoga give me the result, you always look at firstly the Vimshottari Mahadasha and look at the sequence and see which periods, like which planetary periods that particular person is going to run in the next few years, and if any of those planetary periods are supposed to be for the planets which are configured in a Raj Yoga.
Mhm. Yeah, very true. And not just that, I think also I remember having learned, and read also about this, that where this yoga is getting formed in the chart has some relevance also, in the sense, what kind of houses is this yoga falling in? Any thoughts on that, Palak?
Oh, absolutely true. And I think we're going to cover this in one of the charts that we're
Okay.
going to look at. Obviously, Raj Yogas forming in the house of career will obviously mean, by their definition, that you'll have some success in your professional life. But Raj Yogas forming in your house of real estate or property could mean that you'll have a lot of properties in your name,
Sure.
and so on and so forth. So you're right, Sandeep. Where the houses fall also uh, play a role in terms of how these yogas manifest. I also want to add just one more point to what KP said. When we are looking at dasha sequence, of course, the first thing to look at is the whether the main planet that is forming the Raj Yoga, whether you're going to run the planetary periods of that planet. However, it's also possible
Mhm.
that other planets which are configured in the same Raj Yoga uh, can also give the results during their periods.
Yeah. Yeah, and those are pretty much part of when we study how what kind of results a dasha will give, whether it's a mahadasha, antardasha. Those
Yep.
operating rules kind of very clearly defined, and I think maybe sometime we'll do an episode on that as well. There is a lot of confusion on what results a mahadasha lord will give, so that's worth, I think, some time from us, maybe the next time. That yes, the dasha lords are very important. The house in which it falls, and I was studying the chart of this famous personality, Marilyn Monroe. What a life! She has a very powerful Raj Yoga, but it falls in the eighth house. right? The house of death, the house of controversies, the house of scandals, the house of it's also the house of sex. Uh, so I mean, you know that life. I mean, and she ran her Jupiter period, which is one of the Mahadasha lords, and she rises to fame. But then, like Pulak, you were saying, whether it's happening to the 10th house or the 4th house or the 8th house made all the difference. So it gave Raj Yoga
Yep.
results, prominence, success, status, scandals, sex image. She's that blonde bomb of Hollywood, and gave her legacy. I mean, she continues to be in Raj Yoga as if even after her death. So the whole theme of posthumous Raj Yoga playing out in her life. Now, will that play out for everyone? Please don't take it that way. If you have a Raj Yoga in the 8th house, doesn't matter. Doesn't mean that you'll become famous after death. But yeah, there are other factors in every chart which you need to be careful of. And I just wanted to kind of, KP, ask you, just seeing a Raj Yoga is good enough, or should one also be careful to look at other operating factors in the chart? And how important is that? Because a lot of people, just look at one combination and then the context of the chart is lost. Any thoughts on that,
Y-
guys?
Yeah, definitely, Sandeep. I mean, like you said, like the house where the actual Raj Yoga combination is taking place, or even like two different houses being involved. Like what, like which houses are those in the chart? Also, like it's it's quite possible that if one planet is forming the Raj Yoga, it might also be the Lord of difficult houses, and even that could give some challenges. And I know Pulak mentioned before about the benefic and the malefic aspect, and even that makes a huge difference when you start looking at such examples practically.
Great, yeah. Any other points? I think anyone would like to add. Uh,
Yeah, I think I just want to add one thing. Many beginning students have this confusion with regards, especially with regards to natural malefics, which are Saturn, Mars, Rahu, Ketu. Now, it's possible that uh, Saturn or Mars might be configured in Raj Yogas,
sure.
but at the same time, the natural malefic results of Saturn and Mars may also manifest at the same time. And so it's not an either or situation. You can have a situation where the planets give Raj Yoga results, but also play true to their natural significations.
Yeah.
Yep, very true.
And I just like to kind of add to what Bulak says, and Kostav, you could build on that if you want. Is uh, the it's this thing about planets by themselves, and there is a lot of confusion in. I think, guys, this is another topic which a lot of people have said we must, and we should cover sometime. Is this whole thing about when is Mars good in a chart, when is Mars bad,
Mm.
what will it deliver, suddenly, because he's a yoga karaka planet. In fact, that's something I want you guys to comment on also. The whole thing about yoga karaka. So just take a note of that. Is that when is Mars good, when is Mars bad? So you said natural malefics, and then there are functional or temporal malefics or benefics. So that's another confusion area. Also, the point I wanted to add on is that during a certain operating dasha period, it will be unfair to assume that only a kind of results will happen. And this is building on to what Pulak said. If there is something else happening by the same planet which participates in a Raj Yoga, is also participating in some other formation which is not so helpful, the person could get promoted, get a big break, job break or something because of the Raj Yoga operation. And at the same time, maybe on the way back home that day meets an accident. And that's also somewhere configured within that dasha period. So the point is, we need to look at a dasha period as multiple events can happen and the possibilities exist. Raj Yoga, what we are focusing on, is one such part of that combination.
Yep.
And that's what I thought is important for us to just keep a perspective of, and not get carried away because I have a great Raj Yoga, so the next 3 years are going to be only making money and becoming famous. But other things can happen in life as well, and that's what life is. Anything on Yoga Karaka, guys?
Yeah, Sandeep. So like you briefly introduced the concept of yoga karakas, there are a few types of lagnas, or like you would say, types of ascendants, in which this yoga karaka concept really plays out well.
Mhm.
Like, just if I want to give you like a basic definition for the signs owned by Venus, which are Taurus and Libra, Saturn is the yoga karaka. For
Mhm.
the signs owned by Saturn, which are Capricorn and Aquarius, Venus becomes the yoga karaka.
Mhm.
And for the luminary owned signs like Cancer as well as Leo, for both those signs, Mars becomes the yoga karaka. But that
Interesting.
doesn't necessarily mean that if you have like a Cancer Lagna or a Leo Lagna, Mars is going to give you like Raj Yoga results, irrespective of how it's placed. There is a lot more deeper analysis that needs to be done.
Hmm, hmm, hmm. But look, you want to add about, if I look at, I mean, if someone was to just look at their chart and I try to identify which planet is a yoga karaka. I mean, is there very simple, any simple way to kind of identify that?
I mean, it's just what KP said, specific lagnas or ascendants end up ruling both an angle and a trine house. So, for
Oh,
Mhm.
example, just visualize a Taurus lagna. And for Taurus lagna, Saturn actually would rule the ninth house as well as, the 10th house.
10th house, yep.
So Saturn becomes a yoga karaka because it rules both an angle and a trine. And this sort of goes back to your original definition of a Raj Yoga, Sandeep, that
yeah,
it's usually a combination of two planets, either a trine lord or an angle lord combining, coming together in a chart and
yeah.
forming that combination.
My only, just another clarification, and it's a point of confusion out there, I know. Um, does the Lagna Lord, because it's an angle and a trine, kind of be equated, or do you think it's at par with the Yoga Karaka planet? Or is there some difference between what a Yoga Karaka planet is and what the ascendant is? Because people get confused about saying, that the Lagna Lord, because it's an angle and a trine Lord, is equivalent or maybe better than any other planet in the chart, even though if he's the eighth lord or the sixth lord and can only do good and no harm to the person. I mean, how do you respond to that thought?
Uh, so obviously that's not true. You're right when you say that the Lagna Lord or the first house is both an angle house and a trine house.
Yeah.
And obviously, the overall quality of the chart in terms of whatever yogas are getting formed get a boost if the Lagna Lord is strongly placed and in a good dignity and having a source of strength. But the Lagna Lord will have its own agenda, depending on its natural significations as well. And so, a person having, say, an Aries ascendant with Mars as the Lagna, and if Mars is strongly placed in a chart, then obviously that has some interpretive meaning to it. But at the same time, the natural significations of Mars, both on the positive side as well as on the challenging side, will also play out, even
Exactly.
though the chart is ruled by Mars.
Yeah. Very
Yep.
true. Yeah. Anything, KP, you want to add? Any thoughts you have on this, or something else you want to raise?
Yeah, definitely, Sandeep. Not on this, but something else, which is like one of the most common questions. And for like even for me personally, as a new student of astrology a few years ago, this was quite surprising because I want to talk a little bit about Rahu and Ketu, right?
Mhm.
So Rahu and Ketu are considered to be natural malefics, and people are really stressed out when they see that they have a Rahu sub period or a Rahu major period coming up. The
Yeah.
same for Ketu.
Yeah.
But surprisingly, we have seen so many practical examples that Rahu and Ketu are also capable of giving Raj Yoga effects. And I'm hoping that at least one of our examples, which we are planning to share today, not just one, but probably a couple of examples, we'll be able to demonstrate how that works and
So
like
how
how
this
how
is
that
interesting.
operates.
Yeah, this is interesting, and I'm sure everyone would want to know is when do Rahu and Ketu, who are typically, like you said, money makers for astrologers, uh,
Hmm.
when do they become qualified to bring great results in a chart? I mean, are there something about Rahu Ketu which is different because they don't have houses, right? And we said in the
Right.
beginning that Raj Yogas are house-based yogas essentially, because it is about ownership of which houses and how the planets combine. Pulak touched upon it, saying Kendra and Trikona. So now Rahu Ketu have no houses. So yet sometimes their dashas are wonderful, right?
Yep.
So which means they are capable of giving Raj Yogas. But when does that happen?
Yeah, just to give you an example, like this is the basic principle, one of the basic principles of astrology. When we look at the placement of Rahu and Ketu, we always first look for which sign they are placed in,
Mhm.
and in most of the cases, Rahu or Ketu give the results of their dispositor lord, right? And if that dispositor lord is configured in a Raj Yoga, that makes Rahu or Ketu very eligible to give those Raj Yoga results. That's one thing. And then it's like you also like very often see a lot of planets conjuncting with Rahu and Ketu. And let's say that one of those planets is like a trine lord, and the conjunction of Rahu and that particular planet is happening in an angle. Then even that combination and that conjunction is quite capable of giving you Raj Yoga results.
Okay. Uh, Wonderful. Pulak, do you want to kind of elaborate that a little bit, or
Yeah,
yeah?
I mean, our teacher has said, and I think this is mentioned in the text as well, that
Mhm.
Rahu Ketu can actually magnify the results or yogas that they are a part of. So, in fact, the word used is Prabal, in the sense that they give the results of the Raj Yogas if they are also associated with it even more strongly than the even the underlying planet that is involved.
Mhm.
Now I don't know, and I just want to make sure that we've covered the definitions of Raj Yoga. So
Not at all.
um, uh, it's a combination of a trine lord, which is 159, with an angle lord, which is 14710 in a chart. It could that is through a conjunction or a mutual aspect. It
Mhm.
can also be through placement. So you might have a ninth lord sitting in the 10th house or a fifth lord sitting in the seventh house. That also is a Raj Yoga. I don't know whether we covered that or not, but I just wanted to.
No, I think it's important that you brought this out. We did not define it as distinctly as you just did. So yes, combinations of lords of houses which are in kendras and trikonas, guys. So I'm sure all of you know what a kendra trikona is. Second is the fact that Rahu Ketu, right? So Rahu Ketu give their results by association to either the dispositor or the planets aspecting or conjuncting them. And if those planets are in some of these Raj Yoga formations, Rahu Ketu take on those characteristics and can deliver wonderful results. Also, like KP said, part of the definition, Rahu Ketu, if it's in a trine with a angle lord or a Kendra lord, or if it's in a Kendra with a Trikona lord, becomes capable of giving Raj Yoga results in any case, right? As they combine with them. And the principle kind of is, taken up from what Pulak said, that when a lord of a good house, ninth house lord, goes and sits in the fifth house, which is another trine, uh, it becomes capable of giving good results because A, it's owner of a great house, it's sitting in a great house, so the whole thing is wonderful. And if Rahu Ketu are also there, then like the Prabhulo principle operates, and those in their dashas, the results get magnified. Absolutely. So we've covered fair ground, and I think as a summary, Pulak, do you want to kind of pull up a slide and kind of do some summarization for people who'd like to note it down, take note of it as a basic rule? Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Sandeep. And of course, this slide shows a sample chart in the North Indian format. I know some
Yeah.
viewers might be familiar with the South Indian chart, but essentially, like we discussed, it is Raj Yogas are formed when houses or their lords, ruling angle houses or trine houses, get involved. So which is basically angle houses are 1, 4, 7, 10,
Yeah.
and trine houses are 1, 5, 9.
You
The
mean,
Raj Yogas get formed either by conjunction, mutual aspect, exchange, or by placement. So that's the definition of a Raj Yoga. And
Pulak, if you can just go back and for the benefit of our friends, who are, it's just an orientation, who have a South Indian chart orientation. Using your cursor, can you just point out in this the houses which is 1, 4, 7, 10, just for orientation? Yeah.
sure. So you see my cursor here. This is the first house in a North Indian format. And then all the squares which are inside are the angle houses. So 1, 4, 7, 10.
Right.
And then if you count anti-clockwise, which is what we do in the North Indian chart, then the fifth house becomes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the ninth house becomes this one. So whatever is colored in the chart is basically what are the angle and the trine houses.
And this diagram, I really like this diagram, because it tells you it gives you that whole elevation thing about a pyramid, which is, going up. The whole thing is like an arrow going up. And these houses, from one of the teachers I studied with, also she calls it the zone, and kind of says that when you look for a Raj Yoga combination, which is combination of these house lords, and if it is in the zone, right, it adds to the overall power of the Raj Yoga. So in some of the other houses, which are not the Kendras and Trikonas, Raj Yoga results still happen, but then it's that gold purity, Pulak, that you spoke of. Great, yeah, we can. So this is clear, I hope, to everyone. If you have questions on this, all of you who are watching this, please do send us queries. You have a link, at the bottom saying contact us, and maybe on the comment section you can just put in your comments, and we'll come back to you.
Sure. And maybe in the interest of time, do we switch to looking at a few charts now? Because that will give people a more sort of tangible
Yeah, we can just
understanding of.
do the summary slides and move on. I think there's just one more. Yeah.
Okay.
So just reiterating the same thing. Planets are strong, repeats from alternative lagnas. We spoke about that, indicates both strength and dhrida karma. So which is like, a little more fixed and definite to happen. The strengths are written in black. Those are the positive ones. There would be the negative strengths as well, the negative weaknesses. Results are experienced during the Dasha, Mahadasha, Antardasha. Dasha of the yoga giving planets is important. And of course, Dashas operating at the age become important. You have a wonderful Raj Yoga, but the Dasha is going to operate at the age of 85. Well, not really as good if it had operated in the peak of my youth. So I think, Pulak, we can go to some charts and show to our audience, ideas of actually looking in a chart and saying, where do these Raj Yogas fall? What is a Raj Yoga? Which one it is? And what happened in this person's life? Feel free, guys.
Sure. I think this is a chart that KP had identified, and what we're
So,
going to do is
so what we can do is also we can switch off our videos so that the screen is,
Yep.
large enough, and we can keep talking in the background.
okay.
Yep.
Sure. Let me just.
Yeah, there we are.
Okay. So the format, of course, is that we are not going to reveal the name of the person right from the start. We are going to look at the chart the way it is, study what potential results might have happened, and then at the end of the discussion, we're going to, say who the person is. So KP, over to you.
Hey, thanks, Pulak. Yeah, so just like Pulak mentioned, we are not going to reveal. We are first going to we are not going to reveal who this person is. But let's look at this chart. So this is a Scorpio Lagna because you see the number 8 in the first house, and this is like one of the classic, most powerful Raj Yoga combination for a person with a Scorpio Lagna is either the mutual aspect or the conjunction of Sun and the Moon. And that's because Moon is the ninth lord, which is a trine, the strongest trine, and Sun is the 10th lord, which is the strongest Kendra house. And as you can see, this person was born on a full moon day. Sun and moon are exactly, I mean, not exactly, but almost 180 degrees away from each other. You can see moon in the fifth house and sun in the 11th house, and they are in mutual aspect. So this is a classic 9-10 Raj Yoga. And if you just want to quickly look at the other combinations, in this chart, you can also see that like from the reference to the Lagna, there is also a 1-10 conjunction in the 11th house, which is Mars and Sun. There is also a 4-5 Raj Yoga because the fourth lord is Saturn and the fifth lord is Jupiter, and even they are in mutual aspect. Uh, as you can see, Saturn is in the second house and Jupiter is in the eighth house. So, yeah, so if now I want you to look at the Dasha period, and I want you guys to focus at the Ketu period. So
Mm-hmm.
this person started with the Ketu period in December 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go back and look at the D1, Ketu is placed in the 10th house. And that's in the sign of Leo, which is owned by the sun.
Mm-hmm.
So Ketu here is giving the results of the sun, of the planet Sun, and Sun being configured in one of the most powerful 9-10 Raj Yogas. This Ketu major period has the potential to give this person Raj Yoga effects to be experienced during that period.
Hmm.
Sandeep or Pulak, would you like to
Yeah, and if
add?
I just add, to Pulak, Pulak made a point that now this Ketu's placement becomes interesting because it is in the 10th house. And so it's going to give the results of the 10th Lord who participates in this wonderful 9-10 Maharaja Yoga. And the Lagna Lord participates in it. So now this Ketu, I mean, we can simply say career is going to take off. So there's going to be rise in status, power in this person's career basis, the principle, Pulak mentioned. You want to add something, Pulak?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I think one of the things that we also covered was to qualify the fruit of the yogas. And
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
so if you see here, Ketu giving the result of Sun, Sun actually goes to its own sign in the Navamsha. And
Mm.
so Sun becomes strong in that sense.
Yes,
So yeah, just want to make.
absolutely. So what happened, KP, in this person's life? Did they see some rise in status, etc.?
Yeah, they definitely saw like a tremendous rise in terms of like elevation of status as well as career. And do you guys want me to reveal who this person is?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we just want to see what happened to this person, who this person is, and we can Google and quickly check out whether this chart really exists or not.
Sure. So this is the chart of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, more popularly known as AOC. Uh, like people who live in the US or like keep in touch with the US politics should know her because she was the youngest woman ever to serve the United States Congress. Uh, she started a Ketu major period in December 2016, and that's when she actually started being involved in political activism. And sometime in November 2018, she won the election from the New York 14th Congressional District. And that period actually happens to be Ketu's son, I believe.
Yeah,
So,
also
like,
I
if you
want,
could
yeah, well, let me just pull up the sub period as well.
sub periods, thanks.
I don't know, let me know, KP. I'm in Ketu Sun here in 2018.
Yep. So the Ketu sun, like the sun sub period in the Ketu Mahadasha started in July 2018, and she won the election in November 2018.
I want to make a couple of points. We obviously talked about the sun having a source of strength, but look at Mercury as well. Mercury is the 11th lord, strong in its own sign, and 11th house is usually the house of gains, honors, recognition,
Very true.
uh, networking with a wider group of people, all essential skills required for politicians. It combines with the sixth lord, Mars, which is sixth house is also the house of competition. So you need to fight elections and to win. So the way the Raj Yoga manifested in this case, of course, was that she obviously fought elections, she won it, and then she got a lot of recognition because this Raj Yoga is forming in the 11th house.
Yeah. And in fact, the theme that you just mentioned, Pulak, is interesting to see the moon chart. Okay. And if you can just help us, help the viewers know where the moon chart is. So
Yeah,
it's
it's on the
right there.
bottom right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's on the right at the bottom. Now, this combination of Sun, Mercury, Mars is in the seventh house, right? And seventh house, like Sri K. Rao says, is also the house of Padma Prapti because it's the 10th from the 10th. And these are all add-on factors, right? The main theme in the D1 is already indicated. Now, Sun here is the sixth lord. It combines with Mars, who's the second lord, and the ninth lord. And we have Mercury, who is the fourth lord. So we have an angle trine combination repeating in the seventh house from the moon. And moon itself, right, is the fifth lord. So now if you look at the number of angle trine combinations for the same four planets, and the house of competition, the theme of competition possibly emerges. So Raj Yoga, status, rise in career, and indicated by the first house. And then from the moon chart, we see this whole thing about competition coming through. And seventh house of public, seventh house of interacting with others. So you see how the Chandra Lagna is as important. I thought I'll just bring that out.
That's a very valid point, Sandeep. Yeah.
This is
Yep.
interesting. So mostly, I think almost all the principles we spoke of, and there's an additional point, which KP I'm sure you would have raised is if you look at the nakshatra of Ketu, and this is a principle which is more from a dasha point of view, but how things just add up and stack up on top of each other is in Magha nakshatra, which means a throne, right? So Ketu in the 10th house in Magha nakshatra, playing out the theme of the throne or the king's throne, and she wins an election. So that's another point which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, and
Yep.
generally in my studies, I've seen that whenever the sun is associated with either the ascendant lord or the 10th house 10th lord, there is a decent chance for the person to be interested in government jobs or career. And of course, in this case, sun is ruling the 10th house, and it combines with the Lagna lord Mars as well as the 11th lord Mercury.
Absolutely.
Yep. And guys, I'd just like to add one more point. Like reading the history of AOC, and like just by looking at how this yoga got activated and how it elevated her.
Mhm.
So, uh, like she was quite active in the political activism scene since 2016. But until 2018, before she won this election, she used to work as a bartender. And as soon as the Raj Yoga was activated, uh, she won the election, and now she's quite an established and popular politician in the US Congress.
I mean,
Also,
like turnaround of destiny completely.
Yep.
yeah, and if you see the Dasha sequence, Ketu will be followed by Venus, which is again got a source of strength because it's Swarashi in the Navamsha, and it's forming another Raj Yoga because it's the seventh lord in the first house. And so we can expect some things to continue that way. I also wanted to make one more point, and it's not directly related to the topic. There's a lot of misinformation out there, especially on YouTube, about, people focus a lot on transits, but, when it comes to studying a chart, I think the first thing we need to do is look at the static potential in the chart, what combinations are getting formed in the chart, and when will these get activated during the dasha period. Transits come only when the dashas promise a certain result.
I agree with you, Pulak. And my sense is that transits have become so critical because a it's very easy to kind of just look at a transit and say, if I want to do a daily prediction for 7 billion people on this planet, I can say everybody with a Capricorn Lagna will go through some 5 things because I look at a transit chart and say Saturn is in the third, so this will happen, Jupiter, etc. So it becomes very easy. It's populist. It seems to have kind of caught the attention or the fancy of a lot of us, and we tend to kind of look at our daily forecast, right? By an astrologer who we don't know, who doesn't know us, he doesn't have our birth data, nothing at all. Just because Mercury is retrograde, will everybody's laptops, flop or get corrupted or something? Not at all. So the point is, yeah. And Western astrology, again, as is their entire prediction method is based on transits only. They don't have dashas in the Western astrology system. And so I think that's another part of, why the whole marketing and the whole social media is full of this transits becoming a very easy thing to do.
Yeah.
But you're right. I believe in the fact, and that's what we've learned from all our teachers, that it's the chart analysis, D1, D9, Surya Lagna, Chandra Lagna, looking at patterns, doing the rigorous work of identifying each pattern, and then looking at divisional charts. And that's possibly something we'll talk about in the future coming episodes. How to look at support for what you see in the D1 in a divisional chart. Anything you want to say, KP?
Yeah, sure, Sandeep. That's like a very good point from both of you about transits. I consider ourselves to be really fortunate to have learned from teachers who have explained this concept of sukshma and sthula to us. And like for like a person's prediction, you have to look at the sukshma part of it. And transits are a small portion of the complete reading, but I see a lot of stress given to transits on like these everyday YouTube videos. But it's really important to look at the chart first and look at the dasha sequence first, and then look at transits.
And from experience, I think just a suggestion to all the viewers who are watching this, uh, guys, just be careful. Get to the basics first, go step by step. Don't rush into astrology. Personally, for me, it's taken me 3 years to just reach a level where it now begins to make sense to me. Right? The flood on YouTube, this whole thing on news channels coming up with, eclipse is coming and the world will be destroyed, kind of doomsday proclamations. Just be careful. None of that is right. Everyone has a unique destiny. So while some people were, economy was getting thrashed in COVID, a lot of companies went down. Guess what? Maybe the CEOs of the pharma companies had Raj Yogas operating and they made the money. So destinies are different, right? So let's
Yeah.
not generalize it and say, everyone with Capricorn Lagna is going to go down under in this time. Good point, Pulak.
Yep.
Maybe, guys, anything on this chart or should we move on? I'm sure the viewers are curious to see some more applications.
Yeah, I
I
would
think I'm
say
good.
let's just move on because I think we are already almost an hour into the.
Yeah, let's go.
Okay.
Okay, this is an interesting chart. I find this very interesting because if you just visually look at the chart, right, there are so many planets just on one side of the chart and they're not spread out across, and that kind of shows intensity of some kind happening on the houses which are on this side. What I want to bring focus and attention is to Mars and Jupiter in line with Raj Yogas. If you look at Mars and Jupiter, Mars is the lord of the ninth house and the 10th house, and we mentioned Yoga Karaka sometime back, right? So we look at Mars becomes that Yoga Karaka, and it's placed in a good house. It's placed in a Kendra, so the placement is fine. By placement, it is giving Raj Yoga, right? Pulak had said, a good lord placed in a good house is good for the chart and the houses it owns. It is joined by Jupiter. Now, Jupiter is interesting because Jupiter is now the house lord for the ninth house. Okay, so we have 10th lord, Kendra, trine lord, fifth house, Mars, and Jupiter, who owns the other fifth house, coming together. So now a multiple combinations are formed, right? You can say 510, We can say 9 and 5, right? And then a 9-10 by itself. So there are these very powerful yogas getting formed, and like I said, in the zone, right? So this is again in the zone. Jupiter is also the sixth lord. So sixth house is competition, sixth house is obstacles, etc. Now, this person is born in the dasha, which is Palak, if you can just pull up the dasha sequence for our viewers on the right top corner. He's born in Venus, which is just about the first 3 years of his life. So nothing very substantial there. Followed by Sun, right, which goes on till the age of 9 or 10, about close to about 9 years, and gets into Moon. Right now, Sun is again is a exalted planet, very strong. Moon. So the person kind of goes through this whole period, right? Now, in the Moon Dashas, the rise begins to happen. He starts getting noticed, right? And just see the planets are all in the visible half of the chart, in the sense when they're spread out from the first house to first 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, it just kind of, puts you out in front. So it's a daytime kind of a reference, and visibility is a big one. So he's getting noticed in the Moon Dasha, but nothing much happens, right? So he does get selected for, he's a sportsman, he gets selected for, representing India as a young player. Uh, and he's got some time left between Moon and Mars yet to operate. And it's very interesting. He gets picked up, gets selected for a test squad, gets selected for a couple of matches to in international level, gets injured, is not able to perform. The selectors are kind of saying, wonderful talent, but we need to protect him from the Caribbean pace attack and the Vakar Yunuses of the world at that time. And he's not able to perform. He's not scoring runs. He's possibly a couple of innings, he just goes out on duck. There's nothing great happening in this guy's life. And then comes in 1992, pre-World Cup, the Australia tour. And we have Mars Dasha operating. Mars Dasha started in 92, and he goes to Australia and becomes the youngest player in Test history to score a century, right? And that's Sachin Tendulkar. This is the chart of Sachin Tendulkar. And throughout this Mars period, if you see it lasts till 99, right? His performance has been unstoppable. Absolutely back-to-back wonderful performances that he delivered. And he gets into the Rahu Dasha after that. Rahu, like we said, is giving the results of Jupiter. And Jupiter is the other planet participating in that wonderful Raj Yoga. Mars is exalted, Jupiter is debilitated, but cancels debilitation. So that's just the D1. If we look at the D9, do we see any strengths? Do we see any add-ons? I'll invite Pulak and KP to kind of keep building. Too much of a monologue from my side. So guys, anything you want to add to the D1, or we can go to
Yeah,
D9 and other aspects?
just a couple of points. Of course, there are many things which give a strength to a planet. So, like we briefly touched, planet could be in an exaltation sign, like how Mars is here in Capricorn. It could, even the Sun is in its exaltation sign, but
Yeah.
there is also the directional strength that a planet gets by being placed in a certain house. So the Sun obviously gets directional strength in the 10th house.
Yeah.
Now, Sandeep briefly touched about Jupiter. Now, Jupiter, on the face of it, is a debilitated planet because it's in the sign of Capricorn, but its debility gets cancelled because it's with an exalted planet, Mars. And
Yeah.
it's interesting, Sandeep, you mentioned that Moon was, when he ran the Moon period, and its Moon is placed in the sixth house of obstacles and competition.
Yeah.
But if you then study the Navamsha, Moon is actually debilitated,
Yes.
right? So Moon is actually pretty weak in terms of, first of all, it doesn't form any yogas,
Now.
uh, and it's pretty weak in terms of giving any sort of a result. Now,
Sure.
I want to mention one more thing which is not related to Raj Yogas, and maybe we'll cover this later. Moon
Mm.
is also his Lagna Lord, ascendant Lord.
Yes.
And so, some people, when they see this chart, might get scared. Oh, is this a Arishta combination? In the sense, the Lagna Lord going to the sixth house, and there's the additional influence of Mars and Saturn on the first house. And
Mm.
Arista combinations are basically uh, combinations which indicate either health issues or any sort of challenges in a person's life. And of course, we know Sachin Tendulkar had a lot of injuries,
Absolutely.
but this Jupiter actually does a lot of saving in this chart in terms of.
Yeah, in fact, he's got two benefics in the Kendras, and that's one of the rules of saying that there is protective influence to the Lagna or to the physical or the person, right? So benefics and Kendras kind of support him in that,
Yeah.
and the Jupiter aspects the Lagna, so he's got
But
protection.
that
So
kind of
what he's had is,
protects his health.
and it's interesting when he gets to selected, for the first test matches and early in his Moon, Venus, and there onwards for a couple of years. He's not performing well. He's not able to do well. He's not able to kind of go through, and he's getting hurt. So Vakar Yunus almost broke his nose, and
Yep.
stuff like that is happening for him, right? So, and the moment the Mars shift happens, and then we see Sachin explode into this. Again, interestingly, if you see the Mars Jupiter combination in from the Moon chart, from the Chandra Lagna, now Jupiter becomes the Lagna Lord, and Mars is the fifth Lord. And so we have another, this Raj Yoga repeating from the Chandra Lagna. It is in the D1 or the ascendant, and then Mars and Jupiter have strengths. Jupiter's Nijbhanga, Mars being, of course, exalted by itself. And there you are. I mean, another Raj Yoga operation. The guy is wonderful. He's the talent, but he does not rise till the time the right Raj Yoga causing strong Mahadasha operates. And that's how Raj Yogas operate.
Yeah.
That's all from my side. Palak, you want to add or look at another chart before we close up? It's been quite some time.
Nothing from my side. KP, do you have anything to add on this chart?
No, I think I'm good. I wanted to talk about the Chandra Lagna, but Sandeep already covered it. I just want the viewers to notice that like the same two planets are forming a very strong Raj Yoga from the Lagna as well as the Chandra Lagna. And
Yeah.
it's one of the few things that we mentioned earlier during our presentation.
Yeah. So let me quickly move on to the third and final chart. And, we covered one politician, one sports person. So obviously, the natural extension is to cover someone who's from the film industry.
Oh, okay.
And this is one chart which I found really interesting. So this chart obviously belongs to an actor. He's an Hollywood actor, and his story is pretty interesting. He always wanted to be an actor, and his first big break came in the year of 1997, which would have been his Rahu period. And the story is pretty interesting. He was in university at that time, and he and one of his friends, who's also a well known actor, they were roommates, and they started writing a script somewhere in the at the time of 1994. That script, obviously, everybody struggles in the film industry. If you don't have a family lineage or if you're not already well known, they tried showcasing that script to many producers, got rejected many times, and had to face a lot of issues. Till, as a last resort, they reached out to one of their known acquaintances who was a movie director, and he passed on the script to Miramax, which is a large movie producing entity in the US. And that's when the script got bought by Miramax. And funnily, it so happened that both of them, the original script writers, got picked up as actors as well. And so the movie I'm talking about is actually a movie called Goodwill Hunting, which is, I think, if you look at the IMDb list, it's one of the most watched and liked movies. It starred Matt Damon, whose chart we are looking at here, and also Robin Williams. Now, I just wanted to pick the dasha that this person was running when the script was, selected, and the they wrote the script in '94. The movie came out at the end of 1997, and it became a box office hit in '98. And they were also, obviously, they won the Oscars right in the first movie. And so obviously this person Matt was running the period of Rahu, and I think this is something that we briefly alluded to when we were discussing the key concepts. Rahu actually gave the result of, it's in the sign of Aquarius, and it actually gave the result of Saturn. Now, Saturn happens to be the ascendant lord or the Lagna lord for Matt, but you would notice that Saturn is debilitated in the sign of Aries. However, there are two ways Saturn's debility gets cancelled. One is, of course, it's aspected by its exaltation lord, which is, Venus, which is very strong in its own sign in the 10th house, forming a Mahapurush Yoga, which we'll cover maybe in a separate episode.
Yeah.
But also notice that there is an exchange between Jupiter and Saturn in the Navamsha. So Saturn is in the sign of Sagittarius in the Navamsha.
Hmm.
Jupiter is in the sign of Aquarius. So both Jupiter and Saturn become strong because of this exchange. Now
Yeah.
it's interesting because Jupiter rules the third house of artistic talents, and it is in the 10th house with Venus. Venus is all about arts, right? And it is involved in a mutual exchange with the first lord. So there is a 110 Raj Yoga between Saturn and Venus. Saturn also forms a 1-4 Raj Yoga by placement because it's a Lagna trine lord placed in an angle house.
Yeah.
And then Jupiter is obviously the third lord of acting or artistic talents,
Yeah.
which sort of is configured in this yoga. So when he ran the period of Rahu Saturn, that's when he actually, the movie came out, and Goodwill Hunting was nominated and selected for a lot of Oscar awards. So I'll sort of pass it on to you, Sandeep and KP, if you have any observations as well.
Yeah, sure, Pulak. Even if you look from the Chandra Lagna, you see like a very strong 9-10 Raj Yoga being formed in the 10th house.
Hmm. Hmm.
And Pulak, you also mentioned the 3-10 combination. And I mean, we have seen so many examples, right? People who are like established into performance arts,
Yeah, absolutely.
they they always have that 3-10 connection, either from Lagna or Chandra Lagna.
Absolutely. 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 In fact, the Lagna Lord is involved. Another point I think we had earlier in our discussion we touched upon is that when the Lagna Lord gets involved in such a combination, and in this case, the Lagna Lord aspects the Lagna, Saturn aspects onto its own house, which kind of, makes this guy a very robust and a very strong personality. Again, having those two wonderful benefics in the 10th house, that itself is very powerful for the 10th house, right? Career, etc. And then the Raj Yoga on top of that. So that's like, and then both the planets gaining strength, and it's like just boom, destiny kicks off here. And Rahu's aspected by Jupiter, so Rahu kind of gets tempered by that glance of Jupiter onto it. And
Yeah.
so he's not all that bad, like typically people would say Rahu Dasha, he's in
Well,
the second house, I will lose money, I will lose everything in life, wealth will go away, family will be lost. Classically, what I've seen, how very impromptu YouTube kind of astrology has become, and which is why we wanted to do this series of videos, viewers, is just to kind of sanitize and bring some simple principles back into operation to see that, look, no planets are good or bad, no houses are good or bad. There are dimensions in astrology, and getting a good foundation of basics is really, really important. So we saw Sachin Tendulkar, we saw AOC, from a waitress to a senator. We've seen a struggling actor, making his break, and then today we know who Matt Damon is. And then we saw Sachin Tendulkar, a sportsman who's struggling, who's not able to make a break. The right dasha comes and it just takes off. In this case, it is a Rahu dasha. In Sachin's case, it's a Mars dasha, which is a malefic. So how can Mars give great results? And so astrology is layers. Welcome to the layers. And we'll hope in the future episodes, we will keep delayering a lot of the stuff for you, bring you simple stuff, practical applications of lives you can research on Google yourselves. And look forward to seeing you again shortly. Any last words, KP Bullock?
Hey viewers, thanks a lot for watching this video, and please like, share, and subscribe. And if you have any questions for us, please look at the description of our channel and reach out to us, or you could also leave a comment.
Yeah, and if you feel that it would help if you want us to take a look at your chart, then the email address is mentioned in the description of the channel. It's the Jyotish Network at gmail.com. So please do feel free to reach out. We're more than happy to spend time with you.
Absolutely. If anyone is looking for tutorials, if you want to you have learned some Jyotish, you want to expand it, you want to do some work, you want some one-on-one help, welcome. 3 of us would love to do that for you. With that, I think we can bid adieu for today's episode. And till the next time, keep coming back to the Jyotish Network.
Thank you.
Guys.